Look, Hoyo boycotters and Twitter community, I get it. You all hate white people or even people who are fair-skinned and not brown or black, and I get that.
I may not be someone who encounters that side of the skin tone very often, but I spent more than 1.5 years in the land down under and I can see where you're getting at. Plus, you want to see a bit more color in all the characters that the company makes, even if the game that you are now putting on the firing line has nothing to do with the game that made you all antsy in the first place. You just want to see them all over the place, and you know what? Representation and all that, I get the want to see more of that as well. But what made you guys think that doing this and then parading it all over the internet wouldn't make you all look like absolute idiots? And what made you think that when backlash comes towards you, you think that is completely unjustified? Here's the root of the problem this time around. Because when it comes to Genshin and Natlan, though I think that it is stupid that they've been making all these edits for the Natlan characters thinking that they can do whatever they want with whatever it is that they want to complain about, I guess at least that side of the debate still has some sort of a more justifiable point. Playable characters have not seen the kind of treatment that the people of color want to see in the game, and that's fair enough. Even though it's clear as day that these people are completely ignoring how well everything else is represented in the region of Natlan itself beyond the playable characters. Great homage to actual Latin American and African culture, people, settings, environments, and even the overall usage of ancient deities and cultural concepts are very well integrated to their lore and, in my opinion, do a great job at representing the culture that the nation is trying to highlight both in-game and even in real life. But these people rather focus on criticizing the efforts that they've made and completely acting as if the good parts don't exist at all, but that's just how it is, I guess. But when it comes to what they've instigated within Star Rail's community, I think that it's not only completely misdirected, but a lot of the aggression and stupidity is just completely uncalled for, and quite frankly, is borderline going into the realms of hypocrisy for those who are in the complaining side, because they immediately rally and outcry and call for idiotic boycotts when they are offended at the notion that Hoyo is allegedly desecrating POC culture. But those same people have no quarrels with essentially doing the same thing by making these pointless and basically aggravating edits towards someone else's culture, all because said culture have a tendency to gear towards making fair-skinned characters. The main thing that people need to understand is that Hoyoverse is a Chinese company, and they are trying their best to globalize their games and make sure that it's more accessible for their global audience, but people still have to really understand that they are still a Chinese company first and foremost. They are bound to have their own cultural view on things, and it is bound to seep into their games whether you like it or not. You have to also understand that as an overall company, particularly compared to other Chinese companies, whether it's in games or just normal industries, Hoyo has been doing a great job at maintaining all these different cultural involvement in their games, because China is extremely strict when it comes to the expression of other cultures, as it might risk not aligning with what the Chinese culture is normally all about. So, in a sense, please appreciate the effort that they are making to be this open, because they can also as easily close everything back and become the same old China #1 kind of company, and we would be able to do nothing about it, because that's well within their right as a company that still has all their shots be called and semi-regulated by their headquarters stationed within their very restrictive government. Not to mention, the majority of their income and player base comes from China. But I won't talk too much about that point because I've talked about it endlessly in this video. Now, the other part that made these stray shots that Star Rail is getting become much worse is what I said before. People who are making these types of edits and then saying that it's superior or whatever is essentially disparaging the Chinese, or I'd even say a bigger part of Asian and Southeast Asian culture. Just because they made a fair or whatever white-skinned character doesn't mean that they did so because they want to take away POC power. No, they did that because that's just what their culture is and just what they've grown to be accustomed to as they grew up. Yet people are surprised when people such as feixiao's very own voice actor got immense backlash from the Chinese community for reposting said art and then proclaiming that particular melanin edits are chef kiss or whatever. Buddy, Chinese people have always had a strong stance when it comes to defending or upholding their culture. But what exactly did you expect when you turn a character that was a major figure of their China-inspired region in their game and is made by Chinese people working at a Chinese company into the sort of representation that doesn't really align with their insanely strong cultural motifs? Well, no shit, you're gonna get swamped, bro. feixiao's VA even had to delete her Twitter because of all the backlash, and like I can only say, what did you expect?
For those of you who are trying to morally argue with me and be all, oh, you shouldn't condone this kind of behavior and you're a prick for defending this. Buddy, it's called cultural differences. That's just how the world works. Not everyone thinks and have the same type of moral purview as everyone else in the world. If that were the case, then we would have never had wars and ideological differences in this world. Y'all are thinking in happy dreamland mode. I'm just being a realist. Besides, do these people even know that a lot of Asian and Southeast Asian strive to be fair-skinned because a lot of their culture associates having light skin with wealth, seeing as it means that you can afford to stay indoors and not have to work out in the sun. And for some other cultures, like my own country, we just straight up prefer light skin. There's literally nothing else to it. Doesn't mean that we hate anything else because the majority of us will have the skin tone of that anything else, but it's just that there's more of a tendency for us to look at light-skinned people and go, damn, shiny. Because, well, we don't see it very often, and if we were to have a choice to create our own vision of a character or our own vision of a person, then we'd most likely go for a more fairer skin character. A more prominent case is also because those other cultures just don't have that many brown and darker shade of skin tone among them. For example, look at Chinese, Japanese, Korean dramas and their general media. Why do you think 99% of them feature light-skinned people? Because, quite frankly, 1, they think that it's more attractive, and 2, there's more of that skin tone than there are darker shades of it. Especially when it comes to China, it is also simply unrealistic for them to have major figures from their culture be of anything but fair skin. And for those of you who are down there and about to say, well, not everyone from that race is fair-skinned, so they should represent them as well, then let me say this. You do know that there are white African Americans, right? There are also a lot of fair-skinned Latin Americans and Africans, but what would people say when those range of people are the ones displayed to be representing those races? Well, the natlan situation will happen all over again because these people do exist in those particular races, it's just that you guys don't agree with which range are being represented in these games. It's the same reason why people had a lot of issues with the upcoming live-action How to Train Your Dragon casting of Astrid. Nico Parker could probably pull off acting as Astrid, but making a movie about Nordic Vikings is about as white as it gets. Yet they still decide to veer off to their Hula Land type of casting and change shit up for no reason at all. If y'all were so bored of seeing white people, as there are apparently a lot of them, then it shouldn't have been that hard to find a blonde, blue-eyed, preferably Scandinavian girl to play the part. So at the end of the day, by making feixiao that shade of a tone, you're not only creating insanely unnecessary problems, but you're also being a hypocrite in a sense where you are also trampling on other nations' culture and preferences. And who are you to say that they are in the wrong? It's literally just a difference in preference. Doesn't mean that they will straight up shit on you if you're anything but fair-skinned and you decide to show yourself up there. And I've seen posts from people of color who find themselves in China or whatever, and then yes, people will look at you weird at first, but that's just because they're not used to seeing that kind of shade there. Some might ask for a picture or two with you and then that's it. They'll just treat you like normal. It's even worse when you consider the fact that Chinese people don't have access to Twitter. At least most of them do not because, well, everything's blocked there. So there's a high chance that a lot of those Chinese accounts are just posers riding the wave of actual Chinese people who would have the actual right to be angry if they wanted to. And look man, these cultures, they make the goddamn games. It's literally their call. If it is such a drag for you and it's such a deal breaker for you to see these kind of things in the games or not see these kind of things in the games, then 1, you can just stop playing the game and call it a day, never touch it again. Or if it still bothers you that much, go make your own goddamn game. You're very free to make it with all the wokeness that you want and make it as culturally progressive as you want. The recent history, not only in terms of video games, but also the wider pop culture media, will tell you that solely pushing your product's strong points off of that agenda alone does not usually bode well for the end result. Man, one of these tweets even tried to further push the notion that Hoyo-Verse is a racist company by stating that they are silently removing the voice actors that are speaking out on this whole natlan and race issue. But how ironically poetic it is for them to then get a simple message from none other than Alejandro Saab, one of the most beloved Hoyo-related voice actors, who coolly reminded them that there is currently a voice actor strike that is meant to combat voice acting studios from using AI to produce their voices without their consent. And they rightfully will never consent to do that because that's just bad for the prospects of voice acting in general. And not to mention, Hoyo doesn't officially announce these voice actors, even if we already knew who they were beforehand, until those characters are released in the game, and then they will also be able to put their credits in pages like IMDb. This particular tweet even brought up the allegations, which have all been cleared up by the way, that Deluxe VA Sean Chiplock is a groomer because he texted a minor in a furry site that was supposedly for 19-plus-year-olds, just to try and further throw dirt at this whole thing. As far as I have seen, he's well and truly proven himself to be innocent. Still a weird dude, don't get me wrong, because all you furries are, but that's not the problem here, right? The only valid part they had in that tweet was calling out Sunday's VA for being a piece of shit for trying to defend Moses VA's wrongdoings. That one I completely agree with. But then again, they are still directing their anger at Hoyo, when they really should be directing it to the voice acting agencies who provide them with these voices, which in this case would be Rocket Sounds, since they are the ones who have direct handles to these VAs. Hoyo is a busy and sizable company, and matters like this takes weeks or even months to properly navigate through, whether it's from a PR perspective, management perspective, or even a legal perspective. So people really need to put their trust in them being able to handle it in the correct time frame, as they did with Tainari's VA and Moses VA. And guys, remember, Star Rail and Genshin are made by separate teams. One rarely has to do much with the other, and at least keep your complaints on the correct side of the debacle instead of letting it seep into other games that, quite frankly, do not have anything to do with your problems. And for those of you asking, why is it always the English VAs that has all this shit going out of them? I don't know, man. People on that side of the globe love to throw and do shit out there, while the other region VAs just want to do their own thing and move on. Well, that's all I've got for this rant. Until the next video, the name's Leafy, and I'll see you all next time. Sayonara.